Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. Here, we are going to talk about Emperor Qianlong's third empress, Empress Xiaoyi of the Wei family, better known as the beloved Ling. Her life was nothing short of legendary. From an ordinary family girl, she gradually became the most dazzling woman in the imperial harem. Eventually, her son would go on to become the next emperor of the Qing Dynasty, Emperor Jiashi. According to historical records, Emperor Qianlong ruled for 63 years and had 3 empresses, each with a unique story. The first was his first love and original wife, Empress Xiaoyi of the Fucha family. The woman Emperor Qianlong loved most in his lifetime. The second was the gentle and kind consort, who turned against Qianlong in her later years, Empress Nala. Her story ended tragically. As for Wei Jiashi, she was the final empress. Her story was one of both happiness and glory, yet also marked by unfulfilled regrets. Although she was posthumously honored as empress 20 years after her death, she never actually ascended to that throne during her lifetime. So, what exactly did Wei Jiashi go through? Wei Jiashi was born in 1727, the 5th year of the Yongle reign, making her 16 years younger than Emperor Qianlong. Her background was not prestigious. Her father, Wei Qingtai, was a low-ranking official in the imperial household department, belonging to the Baoyi class, meaning a regular family that served the royal family. A popular tale about her childhood claims that she was a songstress from Jiangnan, who was selected for the palace because of her beauty. This story sounds quite romantic and has been adopted by some films and dramas. However, this account is not credible. The earliest record of this tale appeared in a 1943 publication, Biographies of Famous Figures in the Qing Dynasty, edited by an American scholar, which mentioned that Wei Jiashi was from Suzhou and was bought into the palace by a court entertainment institution. However, there are several issues with this record. First, it was written over 200 years after Wei Jiashi's time, so the reliability of this account is questionable. Second, when Wei Jiashi was 9, Emperor Qianlong had just ascended the throne. Her entry into the palace must have been through the imperial selection process, which was very strict in terms of family background. It was nearly impossible for a songstress to pass such a selection. Finally, the book mentions an institution called the Shengping Bureau, but it did not exist during the Qianlong reign. The institution in charge of entertainment at the time was known as the Southern Court. Therefore, from a historical standpoint, it is unlikely that Wei Jiashi was a songstress. She was simply the daughter of an ordinary family within the imperial household department. Her family background was clean but not distinguished. Some historical sources note that the Qing dynasty's imperial selection process was highly organized, with 2 types. One was the 8-banner selection, where girls selected could directly become mid-level concubines, at least achieving the title of Daying, a lower-ranking consort. The other was the imperial household department selection, where girls chosen could only initially become palace maids. Wei Jiashi's father was just a small official in the imperial household department, so when she entered the palace, her starting point was as a maid. The journey from being a palace maid to rising through the ranks to become an imperial consort, and almost becoming empress during her lifetime, was no simple feat. Wei Jiashi probably entered the palace between the 4th and 7th year of Emperor Qianlong's reign. At the age of about 14 or 15, youthful and inexperienced, just beginning to navigate the complex world of the imperial court. When she first entered the palace, she likely served Empress Fucha. Why do I say this? Because Empress Fucha passed away in the 13th year of Emperor Qianlong's reign, and when Wei Jiashi passed away in the 40th year, Qianlong specifically had her buried next to Fucha's tomb. He also wrote a poem mentioning their close relationship during their lifetimes and even said that when Wei Jiashi first entered the palace, many palace rules were taught to her by Empress Fucha. This suggests that in her early years, Wei Jiashi likely served by Empress Fucha's side, possibly as a close attendant or a small palace maid. So, how did an ordinary palace maid become a consort of Qianlong? There are no detailed historical records. But there's only one possibility: by some chance, Wei Jiashi had an intimate encounter with Emperor Qianlong. This encounter could have been a random opportunity or even a beautiful accident. The Qing Dynasty had a rule that if a palace maid caught the emperor's attention, she could be promoted from the status of changzai, a low-ranking concubine, or daing, a consort, to a higher rank in the imperial harem. Some historians have speculated that Wei Jiashi's opportunity might have been linked to Empress Fucha. Fucha was a broad-minded and kind-hearted empress, and historical texts mention that she was very kind to both palace maids and eunuchs. When Wei Jiashi entered the palace, she had no children. According to the Qing Dynasty's rule, a mother is honored through her son. And without any support from a child, it would have been difficult for her to rise. However, it is very likely that Empress Fucha helped her. Had Fucha disapproved, Wei Jiashi, as a maid without children, would have found it hard to directly ascend to the rank of consort. Therefore, Wei Jiashi's fortune not only came from Qianlong's favor but perhaps also from the kindness and support of Empress Fucha. In the 10th year of Qianlong's reign, at the age of 19, Wei Jiashi was conferred the title Ling Pin and given her own title. The character Ling has two interpretations, one from the Book of Songs, meaning elegant in temperament and virtuous in character, and the other from the Manchu language, meaning intelligent and wise. Both interpretations are very fitting for Wei Jiashi. When Qianlong bestowed the title on her, he used phrases like Jiao Xian Mu Jiao, Wen Gong Nei Zai, describing her as elegant in demeanor and virtuous in character. Moreover, her rise from a palace maid to an imperial consort, and later her son becoming emperor, shows that she was indeed clever and capable. Why do I say this? Because Empress Fucha passed away in the 13th year of Emperor Qianlong's reign. And when Wei Jiashi passed away in the 40th year, Qianlong specifically had her buried next to Fucha's tomb. He also wrote a poem mentioning their close relationship during their lifetimes and even said that when Wei Jiashi first entered the palace, many palace rules were taught to her by Empress Fucha. This suggests that in her early years, Wei Jiashi likely served by Empress Fucha's side, possibly as a close attendant or a small palace maid. So, how did an ordinary palace maid become a consort of Qianlong? There are no detailed historical records, but there's only one possibility: by some chance, Wei Jiashi had an intimate encounter with Emperor Qianlong. This encounter could have been a random opportunity or even a beautiful accident. The Qing Dynasty had a rule that if a palace maid caught the emperor's attention, she could be promoted from the status of changzai, a low-ranking concubine, or daing, a consort, to a higher rank in the imperial harem. Some historians have speculated that Wei Jiashi's opportunity might have been linked to Empress Fucha. Fucha was a broad-minded and kind-hearted empress, and historical texts mention that she was very kind to both palace maids and eunuchs. When Wei Jiashi entered the palace, she had no children. According to the Qing Dynasty's rule, a mother is honored through her son. And without any support from a child, it would have been difficult for her to rise. However, it is very likely that Empress Fucha helped her. Had Fucha disapproved, Wei Jiashi, as a maid without children, would have found it hard to directly ascend to the rank of consort. Therefore, Wei Jiashi's fortune not only came from Qianlong's favor but perhaps also from the kindness and support of Empress Fucha. In the 10th year of Qianlong's reign, at the age of 19, Wei Jiashi was conferred the title Ling Pin and given her own title. The character Ling has two interpretations, one from the Book of Songs, meaning elegant in temperament and virtuous in character, and the other from the Manchu language, meaning intelligent and wise. Both interpretations are very fitting for Wei Jiashi. When Qianlong bestowed the title on her, he used phrases like Jiao Xian Mu Jiao, Wen Gong Nei Zai, describing her as elegant in demeanor and virtuous in character. Moreover, her rise from a palace maid to an imperial consort, and later her son becoming emperor, shows that she was indeed clever and capable. Wei Jiashi's journey from a palace maid to a consort may have started from a low position. But she steadily rose through the ranks, without leaving any negative records. In the fiercely competitive imperial harem, this was no easy feat. However, her relationship with Emperor Qianlong was not particularly close at first. Between the 10th and 20th years of Qianlong's reign, although she gained his attention, their interactions were not frequent. Qianlong held a favorable impression of her, but their relationship was not yet one of intense affection. For example, in the 10th year of Qianlong's reign, she was granted the title Ling Pin. And 3 years later, she was promoted to Ling Fei. The rapid promotion indicated that Qianlong valued her. In the 16th year of Qianlong's reign, her father, Wei Qingtai, passed away due to illness, leaving behind a debt of over 800 taels of silver. Wei Jiashi had 3 brothers, but they seemed to be inept, and the family's financial situation was poor. When Qianlong heard of this, he directly paid off their debts, and also granted them property and land. These actions demonstrated Qianlong's care for Wei Jiashi, and his willingness to resolve her family's concerns. On the other hand, Wei Jiashi didn't get pregnant until the 20th year of Qianlong's reign, indicating that their interactions up to that point had been limited. During that period, Qianlong's attention was mainly focused on Empress Fucha and the later Empress Nala. Although Wei Jiashi was favored, she had not yet reached a point where she held exclusive affection from the emperor. For Wei Jiashi, these relatively peaceful years were already a kind of happiness. She had gone from being a maid serving others to becoming a consort with 6 palace maids in her service, receiving annual rewards, and enjoying very comfortable living conditions. The financial difficulties at home were also resolved by Qianlong. From her perspective, this was a dramatic change. She probably never imagined that she would become the central figure in the imperial harem. But fate is unpredictable. From the 20th year of Qianlong's reign, her relationship with the emperor suddenly grew especially close. Between the 20th and 30th years of Qianlong's reign, over a span of 10 years, she was pregnant 7 times and gave birth to 4 children, 2 sons, the 15th prince, Yongle, and the 17th prince, Yongle, and 2 daughters, the 7th and 9th princesses. During this period, she was pregnant almost every year, which placed a heavy burden on her body. And she even experienced 1 miscarriage and 2 infant deaths. Especially when her 17th son, Yongle, was born, she was already 40 years old, which, even by today's standards, would be considered a high-risk pregnancy. Such frequent childbirths were a tremendous physical challenge for her. These frequent pregnancies over the 10 years led to 2 different opinions from the public. One view is that it shows Qianlong's deep affection for Wei Jiashi, and that their relationship was extremely close. The other view is that Wei Jiashi's poor health and frequent pregnancies suggest that Qianlong did not cherish her enough. However, most people lean toward the first interpretation, for several reasons. First, Qianlong had a tendency to give particularly concentrated attention to the consort he favored. For example, Empress Fucha had 2 children within 3 years, while Nala had 3 children in 5 years. And other consorts had similar experiences. Although Wei Jiashi's 7 pregnancies in 10 years may seem many, they were not exceptional. Second, every time Wei Jiashi faced health issues, Qianlong showed great concern. For instance, after her miscarriage in the 24th year of Qianlong's reign, Qianlong immediately elevated her to Guifei, noble consort, and appointed the 2 most powerful officials at the time, Fu Heng and Lu Tongshuan, to preside over the promotion ceremony. The grand nature of this ceremony was not only meant to comfort Wei Jiashi, but also to signal her elevated status to the entire court and harem. Third, Wei Jiashi's continuous promotions indicated that Qianlong's trust and affection for her remained unchanged. Therefore, her 7 pregnancies over 10 years were more likely a sign of Qianlong's favor rather than a lack of care. As Wei Jiashi's status in the imperial harem grew higher, in the 24th year of Qianlong's reign, at the age of 33. She was promoted to the title of Ling, noble consort. This promotion marked her ascent to a high-ranking consort in the harem, making her an important figure. At this point, she had already risen from an ordinary palace maid to a key figure in the harem. However, advancing any further was not so easy. The highest ranks in the Qing harem were limited to the positions of Empress and Imperial noble consort. At that time, the position of Empress was still held by Nala, and there seemed to be no hope for Wei Jiashi to become Empress. The position of Imperial noble consort was also hard to attain. As the Qing Dynasty had an unwritten rule, the position of Imperial noble consort was typically not established while the Empress was alive. Unless the Empress was gravely ill or unable to manage the harem, in which case a noble consort could be appointed to take over. Therefore, as long as Nala was fine, no matter how favored Wei Jiashi became, she could only remain as a noble consort. However, history often unfolds unexpectedly. In the 30th year of Qianlong's reign, during a southern inspection tour to Zhejiang with the consorts and officials, Nala unexpectedly cut her hair in her room. In Manchu customs, cutting one's hair was a serious taboo, essentially equivalent to cursing her husband. When Qianlong discovered this, Nala not only refused to apologize but also had a heated argument with him. In a fit of anger, Qianlong sent her back to the capital that same night and placed her under house arrest. As a result, Nala lost the ability to manage the harem. In May of that same year, Wei Jiashi was promoted to Imperial noble consort, formally taking over the management of the harem and becoming the highest-ranking consort in practice. This promotion marked the pinnacle of her life, making her the most powerful woman in the imperial harem. There is a controversy surrounding this. The timing of Nala's haircutting incident and Wei Jiashi's promotion was very close. Some suspect that Qianlong's deep affection for Wei Jiashi might have caused Nala's jealousy, which led her to impulsively cut her hair. Some modern historical drama series even portray the situation as if Wei Jiashi had deliberately stirred up trouble to provoke Nala. However, logically speaking, this seems unlikely. First, Nala was 48 years old at the time, her son Yongle had grown up, and her position as empress was stable. She was also known for her composed and dignified character. So it seems unlikely that she would have acted so impulsively due to jealousy. Moreover, the hair-cutting incident became one of the biggest scandals in the Qianlong court. And Qianlong was very sensitive about it. If Wei Jiashi had been involved in any way, Qianlong would not have allowed her to manage the harem for the next 10 years. Therefore, Wei Jiashi likely just happened to seize the opportunity. The exact reason for Nala's haircutting incident is not clearly recorded in historical texts. It might have been due to her personal emotional outburst or other unknown reasons. In any case, Emperor Qianlong needed someone he trusted to take over the management of the harem. And he chose the most favored consort at the time, Wei Jiashi. After Wei Jiashi became imperial noble consort, she managed the harem for 10 years and performed exceptionally well. She was intelligent and cautious, never leaving any negative records behind. Her 2 sons and 2 daughters were also well taken care of by Qianlong. Especially her son Yongle, who was secretly named as the crown prince by Qianlong and became the future Jiaqing emperor. Her daughters, the 7th and 9th princesses, were married into prominent noble families. The 7th princess was even titled Guluan Princess, a status reserved for the daughters of the empress, indicating that while Wei Jiashi was not the empress, her position was very close to that of one. However, after Nala's death in the 31st year of Qianlong's reign, why didn't Wei Jiashi become empress herself, despite still being alive? There are a few reasons. Firstly, Wei Jiashi's background was an unavoidable hurdle. Her father was merely a servant in the imperial household department. For her to rise from a palace maid to imperial noble consort was already miraculous. But becoming empress would have faced significant political resistance. The eight-banner aristocracy might not have accepted the daughter of a commoner as their sovereign. Secondly, Qianlong was 56 years old at the time, and it was a late stage for him to marry a new empress. Looking at his predecessors, Emperor Kangxi did not appoint a new empress after the age of 36. And Emperor Yongle did not do so after 54. Qianlong remarrying at 56 would have seemed somewhat out of place. Especially since his previous two empresses, Fucha, who passed away early, and Nala, with whom he had a falling out, had not ended well. Qianlong might have lost interest in the idea of appointing a new empress. Moreover, although Wei Jiashi was in charge of the harem, she did not hold the title of empress but effectively acted as one. Qianlong may have felt that this was enough. During the 10 years Wei Jiashi managed the harem, she handled affairs appropriately, earning Qianlong's trust and solidifying her family's position. Unfortunately, she did not live to see the most glorious moment. In the 40th year of Qianlong's reign, her eldest daughter, the 7th princess, suddenly died at the age of 20. This was a huge blow to Wei Jiashi. Perhaps due to the physical toll of frequent pregnancies in her younger years. Combined with the grief of losing her daughter, her health rapidly declined. Just 19 days later, she passed away at the age of 44. Qianlong was deeply saddened and did not appoint any new imperial noble consorts thereafter, leaving her position vacant forever. It wasn't until 20 years later, when Yongle ascended the throne as the Jiashi emperor, that Qianlong posthumously honored Wei Jiashi as Empress Xiaoyi, and placed her alongside Fucha. At that moment, Wei Jiashi finally received the title of empress, but she had already passed away 20 years earlier. According to relevant historians, Wei Jiashi's life was like her title, Ling, meaning graceful, intelligent, and virtuous. She rose from a palace made to imperial noble consort, not just through luck, but through her caution and wisdom. Throughout her years in the harem, she never had any negative records, nor did she use her position to benefit her family. She even intentionally distanced her brothers from politics. Her story lacks much of the intrigue and backstabbing typical of palace dramas, and is instead one of gradual effort and perseverance. The benefactors she encountered, Fucha and Qianlong, gave her opportunities, and she seized them through her own efforts. The title, Ling, not only represents grace and wisdom, but also embodies her attitude toward life, low-key, kind, and resilient. Of Qianlong's three empresses, Wei Jiashi may have been the least conspicuous, but her story is the warmest and most inspiring of all. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.